continue our discussion on the levels of martial arts training and or psychology. Now, I realize I'm not in my martial arts instructor training gear. I happen to just be doing a little bit of both today. So what I want to talk about, however, regardless of this attire, and we're talking about level 10. So level 10, like level 9 is, 9 is up to here. And I talked about that a little bit, and we call it patience. And sometimes I might just say, you just do nothing at this point because that's what the opponent wants, and you need to understand that. Now, level 10, we call it the other thing, or because it's many micro things. So let's talk about, we call it radar. But what does that mean? It means I understand the fighting measure, and I understand distance pacing. So the fighting measure goes back to, it's really a complex issue because it depends on what the weapon is. If you're talking about kickboxing, or you're talking about boxing, are you talking about a weapon in the hand? What length of the weapon now? And you could even, what's the fighting measure for this? Well, that depends on the person that's holding the firearm. But let's kind of leave that aside now, and let's just talk about, we understand what the fighting measure is based on all those things. We understand what distance pacing is based on what the fighting measure is at that time, because the two are connected. So when we may even use the term razor's edge. Razor's edge implies that I'm in a position where if the opponent does strike, I can hit them anytime I want. And so this is why you need 9 first. If you're not patient, you're going to be in this kind of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You're using a lot of energy, you're using a lot of your resources for really limited gain. Now, that is part of distance maintenance or distance pacing. So let's just state what that is. The fighting measure is the distance where the opponent must lunge fully at you. And let's just say with a firearm, let's just say they have to commit to that attack for accuracy purposes, okay? Let's leave that aside though. So the distance where the opponent must lunge fully at you is what we call the fighting measure. Distance pacing, also known as distance maintenance, is maintaining that distance without any extra cause or need. In other words, I'm not flailing around and moving. I'm using micro adjustments, small little position changes to create the optimal angle and or distance in order to strike the opponent if he makes an attempt. And this requires me not to fall for those fakes and half motions and line deceptions and time deceptions, which we have talked about ad nauseum in the past 4 or 5 years on all of our video sets and stuff like that. We have video sets just based on that. So we have to include that in this, what we call radar, or the other thing. Now the other thing, with the understanding of distance pacing, the fighting measure is understanding your situation. And that's what we call situational awareness. And situational awareness, we often talk about awareness, and just being generally aware of your surroundings. Like if you're walking and you're looking at your phone, good chance you're gonna fall off a cliff. So when we're talking about level 10, we're talking about knowing what your range is, your distance is, how to maintain or keep that pace with the opponent, but we're also talking about what is going on around you. Are there other opponents now? Is there a secondary or tertiary threat? Are you in a threat environment? And I had touched on this at the end of my last video when I was talking about level 9, is that, am I going to walk into a situation where now I'm enveloped by potential threats? And I've done that and more than once in my life. It gets a little bit more serious when you are carrying a firearm and or any kind of weaponry. Because if that can be arrested or seized from you, then now you have a different situation than what you walked into. So in other words, if I walk up on somebody and I begin engaging them, even just intensely in a verbal, and I forget that someone's behind me. Now this holster is what we call level 3 retention. You have to defeat mechanisms in order to draw the weapon. I'm not gonna really show that on this video. So I have that to my advantage, but I have many other items that could be taken from me and used as weapons against me or against other people that I might not want to have that happen. So I have to have situational awareness, which needs to be 360 degrees, and you can attain that by moving your body. In general, in speaking with somebody, I make these subtle micro adjustments, and I'm exaggerating them, but if I'm just shifting and looking around, you might recognize this pattern of movement from Wing Chun's Chum Kyo. I'm expanding my visual awareness and my understanding of where I am, and just like a radar scans a 360 degree view of the battlefield, and this is what I'm doing now, is I'm making sure that there's no threats from above, there's no threats from the side, there's front or back. I'm covering my bases, so to speak. So that's kind of the other thing. I have to understand the distance between me and those that may be a threat, and or my position relative. And sometimes distance isn't an option, and this happened. I think I made a video, or posted a video last week about using a firearm against an edged weapon offender. And I get a lot of kicks on, well, you shouldn't be that close. No kidding. However, you're often that close before you realize there's a true threat. It's one thing to be called to a threat and say, there's a person with a knife on this corner. And you just being out in general, talking to people and doing your job, whatever that happens to be, or just in your everyday life, you're around people, you're in the grocery store, you're in a shopping mall, you're rubbing elbows. You might be standing in line at the post office. You don't know who those people are. So you are inside what we call the kill box a good percentage of the time when you're out in public places. And people will tell me all the time, I will never let someone in that. You ever get in an elevator? No. You ever go on an escalator? No. You ever go up on the airport? No. You ever go, no, they've never been in a buffet line. You can tell I have, right? I'll get that out of the way. So, people will oftentimes make judgments and assessments based on, they don't really have a realistic view on what the world is like. And especially in martial arts, we don't often understand Man, it's not a perfect world. If in a perfect world, yeah, I wouldn't let people that close to me. However, when I have to approach to talk to somebody, they're already in that range. If they happen to draw a weapon or be concealing a weapon, I need to be aware of that, and that's where we talk about situational awareness. If I'm addressing somebody, I have to understand that person that's standing 3 feet in that direction may want to enter this discussion, and they may do it violently and without permission. So you could say I would never let someone close, but this is happening without your permission, and maybe without your knowledge. So you have to think about that. So the other thing is many little things all tied in together, and that forms our general understanding of our battle space, okay? And so we're talking about distance pacing, the fighting measure, position relative, what we call face-to-face, or facing. So if I'm facing you, you're facing that direction and I'm facing you squarely. If I'm facing you shoulder to shoulder, square up, we are now face to face. So a lot of our talks are going to start in a face to face position. I may become facing you if I can get these little movements in without your adjusting. And that's why I say these are kind of micro movements. And this whole concept of level 10 is inclusive of those things and level 9. Okay, so that's what we call level 10, is radar and or the other thing. And we're learning how to use our level 9 in order to not put ourselves in a bad position where we can't now react at all. And yeah, there's going to be times when you're just not able to utilize that. But as this situation closes around me, I'm going to be assessing everything that I can absorb. And with practice, you'll find more and more. I saw the movie Jason Bourne, and he, goes into a restaurant or this diner with this female companion, and he says he remembers the license plates of all the cars. He realizes this guy can handle himself. He knows that guy probably has a gun in his vehicle. Now, these are all things that take practice to learn. And let's just say that agent or person would have been trained to do that and thoroughly and with great pain in order to achieve that result. For myself, I realized after working at a location repeatedly day in and day out and observing every single vehicle and visitor and person that drove onto that school's property, I began to know license plates. I could read the license plate and know if that car belonged there or not, and that would determine whether or not I had to engage that vehicle verbally, or if I could let him go without worrying too much about it. Doesn't mean you don't look to see who's driving the car. It doesn't mean you don't think, what's on that person's face? This is another layer to that, because you can know the vehicle, you can know the person, then you need to know what is on that person's mind to the degree you could read that. So these are all things that fall into this now we're talking about into the conscious and subconscious level, bringing this training to its fruition, and it starts based on level 1 and level 2 and level 3 and level 4 and progressing down to level 9, thoroughly being able to understand and develop your attributes in those and know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then you will develop level 10. And this is stuff that just often isn't talk much about in a martial arts environment. It might be in a self-defense training environment. I don't know how deeply other instructors go into what I just talked about. There's more to it, but this is where I'm going to leave this at, because this is in the public sphere, and I don't want to give this away, and I may turn this video private so that it just remains within our group here. But if you had the opportunity to watch this, please leave thank you of some kind, a like, subscribe to our channel. I'm not going to ask you to share the video unless you're sharing it within our organization, which is Reister International Martial Arts Organization. If you're a member and you have friends that are members, make sure they see this video, because I don't often get to go this deeply into this information. I don't get to discuss this during classes when you're here, because you all will fall asleep. Just like I was told the last video I did, it took people 2 or 3 or 4 watching sessions to get through the whole thing. This is material that I really want to get out to my students. I would really like it to get out to the people that I know and care about. However, it's not able to just produce this so simply, and I'm working on a way to do that. You guys are going to help me. If you get a chance to watch this video, please go on the YouTube channel and make a comment on the video. Please, if you're not subscribed already, subscribe to the channel. We need this channel to grow. And then give it a like and share it if your friends are REMA members, or if you have someone you just care about, go ahead and share it. And if I decide to make it private and for purchase, I'll do that later. I want to thank all of you who took the time to spend the 15 or 20 minutes I took on this one level. If you took the time to watch it, thank you.